Watching on YouTube and to those watching on Twitch, this is the first ever tier list live on stream with the chat available as well. So we have the Twitch chat that's going to be giving their live feedback, and then the guys on YouTube that can give their feedback in the comment section below. And I'm excited to do this one. It's going to be best arena civilizations under the current patch of July 2023, so very fresh. Also, Romans aren't included here, but at the very end of the video, I'll tell you where I think Romans will be. And if I forget to do that, then the Twitch chat will remind me, okay? So that being said, let's go ahead and hop right in. Starting off, we're going to go alphabetically, okay? Starting off with the Aztecs. Aztecs on Arena used to be really, really insane. However, I feel like lately, the meta has kind of shifted towards light cav and monks for the relics, and Mesosivs don't have light cavs. That's a really big problem. I'm not just saying that because I like light cavs, I'm saying that because it actually matters. And this is also post Massive Arena 7, which is the biggest arena tournament of the year. So I'm actually very fresh with the knowledge, so I'm going to be giving you guys the most up-to-date knowledge possible. I would put Aztecs either at the top of B tier or at the bottom of A tier. And the reason is, they don't have light cav, but they have everything else that's good on Arena. They got really strong monks, probably one of the best monks in the game, in fact. Then they have really strong infantry, champions with gambesons. You've got pikemen, you've got jags, you've got eagles. Although eagles aren't great on Arena, they're still part of the lineup. And then you also have amazing skirms in the late game. So what you can do with Aztecs is go for like monks plus pikes and skirms. And so you save all your gold for the monks. And then you can also add to that trebs or siege onagers or something like that. And so if you have a few relics with that, you can basically play the game forever. You never really run out of gold. All right, next up we got the Bengalis. Bengalis are another interesting civilization on Arena. You have a really strong monk rush, kind of similar to Aztecs, but you could also play a light cav opening, and then your late game usually consists of trash like skirms, halbs with monks as well. That being said though, you have power options like the elite elephant archer from Bengalis, which is insanely strong. You have the Ratha that could also be pretty strong, and you have pretty much all the siege available except a bombard cannon, I guess. You have average siege all around except the bombard cannon. So Bengalis is pretty well rounded, but I would say they probably are slightly better than Aztecs, but around the same, like literally around the same. All right, next up we've got the Berbers. The Berbers are an interesting one because I feel like they do well with the light cav opening. Cheaper light cav and castle is pretty solid, or cheaper scout cavalry line. And then they also get good stable units long term. Camel archers are fantastic. You've got really cheap hussar to spam in the late game. You also have bombard cannons. You also get siege engineers. So Berbers are pretty solid, but I feel like the lack of eco bonus makes them a bit of a slower civ. So I would put them probably around top of C tier. I don't know exactly where I'd put them 100%, but I think top of C tier makes a lot of sense for the Berbers. And then we've got the Bohemians. Bohemians used to be very, very insane on Arena, but they've suffered a few nerfs since then, and I honestly don't know exactly where to place them. However, it has to be somewhere in the A tier, because at the end of the day, they still have the Hufnitze, which are amazing. They've got the Halberdiers, they've got fully upgraded skirms, they've got really strong hand cannons available in Castle Age as well. And their economy is pretty solid, being able to mine gold and stone really fast. Also with the fervor looking good too. So I would probably put them right behind Aztecs, but pretty high up. Again, before the nerfs, they were definitely in S tier. But now I feel like they're probably around somewhere here. But again, I kind of value Bohemians slightly less than other people. So if you disagree with this, you think Bohemians are higher, that's fine. I don't think anyone is saying they should be lower though. Next up, we got the Britons, and I'm personally a huge fan of Britons on Arena. I think they have very little weaknesses. Their late game is insane, with longbows, halberdiers, light cav, even champions. And I think they just recently got gambesons as well, so Britons are going to be absolutely crazy in late game. The only issue with Britons is that sometimes, it's hard to fight for the relics when you're trying to boom, because yes, you get the cheaper town centers, so that usually means you go up to like 3 TC right away. And sometimes it's hard to just fight for the relics while affording the 3 TC. So I feel like Britons, their best play is probably just to go 3 or 4 TC, ignore the relics, and then just go for a big push later on with the economy lead. That being said, Britons can also still fight for relics if you want to with light cav, no problem. And I also think Britons are great against monk pushes, because you have crossbows with extra range, longbowmen, all the good stuff. So I'll probably put Britons around... I'm debating either in A tier somewhere or in B. I think I'm gonna put them top of A actually, which is really bold. They're going to be middle of A. There's going to be other civs that go before it. But I genuinely think that Britons are just insane. Like, if I think of Britons versus all of these, I feel like Britons win against all of these, which is kind of crazy to think about it. Bohemians used to dominate Britons, but after all the nerfs that they suffered, I feel like Britons are better now. Next up, we got the Bulgarians. Oh, also, last thing I'll say about the Britons. The Warwolf Trebuchets are insane. Absolutely insane. They push everything. They can also hit the units, so they're probably the most obnoxious part about the Civ, to be honest. Next up, we got Bulgarians. I don't think there's anything wrong with Bulgarians on Arena in general, but they are missing some options, like Bombard Cannon, good monks. But they have, a good boom. They can fight for Lycav or for relics really easily. They can go for a big 5DC boom. But I think, missing Bombard Cannon and monks is a really big deal. You do have Siege Onager, that being said, though. I don't know, I'd probably put Bulgarians somewhere in C tier, like right there. They probably beat a lot of civs that don't have Bombard Cannons or don't have good monks. But they die against like the really strong arena civs every time. Next up we have Burgundians, and in my opinion, this is one of the best civs on Arena still, despite receiving a couple nerfs. I'm going to put them straight up at S tier. I don't know if they're going to be the absolute best civ, but Burgundians are definitely up there. They have all the options you're looking for. They've got the hand cannoneer that come in real quick. They've got the Cousilier that can come in as well as a unique unit. They've got amazing monks. They've got the unique tech that makes you have infinite gold if you have a good amount of farms, or like a small trickle of infinite gold. The relics, if you win them, they generate food and gold, which is really insane. You get cheaper stable tech, so husbandry, Lycav cheaper. You get your eco upgrades for cheaper and earlier. So Burgundians for me is one of the strongest arena civs for sure. Next up, we've got Burmese, and Burmese are probably going to be pretty high as well. And this is not just because I love the Burmese. I honestly feel like Burmese are crazy good for Arena. The free wood upgrades are fantastic. You've got a good amount of options in terms of military, good monks, good bomber cannon, decent siege all around. And then your options are pretty solid. You've got crazy good infantry. You've got some cavalry that could make it onto the field. And the only thing you're lacking is range units or hand cannoneer. But everything else Burmese has. And then on top of that, you do have Arambai that could be pretty handy as well. So Burmese are definitely up there. I don't know exactly where, but I'll probably put them, I don't know about above Britons. I'll probably put them above Bengalis though, to be honest. Yeah, I think right there makes sense for Burmese. All right, and after that, we got the Byzantine. And for me, Byzantine is a perfect B tier civ. It has everything that you need on Arena, but it doesn't have the best early game eco, so fighting for relics could be pretty difficult. That being said though, fast imp potential is quite solid for this civ. The cheaper imp is nice, and then you also get really cheap trash, monks, bombard cannon, all the good stuff that you'll need. Siege ram is available as well, and I feel like Byzantines are one of the few civs that can win in late game, even if you don't get any of the relics. So definitely a strong civ, but just not as oppressive as the higher up civs. Next up, we got the Celts, and I personally heavily dislike Celts on Arena. I don't even think they're bad. I just think that they miss crucial options and they die so hard to monks that it's very hard to make them work. But I still think they're like better than some of the other civs, so I'm going to put them at top of C tier. You just have a great economy, great Halb siege play or infantry siege play, and their road raiders recently got buffed. So for me, I'll probably throw them in top of C tier. Sayomi Fox thanks to the Prime sub, welcome. And yeah, I'm pretty happy about that. But yeah, nothing too crazy. Chinese is an easy D tier. I actually don't like the civ on Arena. The first tier list where Chinese is D tier, I think. The reason why Chinese are D tier, first of all, they just got nerfed. So they lost 5% of their cheaper techs. And in general, Chinese are not great on Arena. Sure, you have a good eco, good early game, but your boom is nothing special. So if you go 3TC, nothing too crazy. You can fight for relics if you want, but you're lacking like bombard cannon, you're lacking good monks. You have block printing but no redemption. And I just don't think that Chinese really have a lot of options in late game. You don't even have really good siege. You have heavy scorpion and siege ram, but no siege engineers makes that a little tricky. And the only thing you have is like bomber towers with Chukunu, Arbalest, and like Lycav. But that's, to be honest, more of an Arabia comp anyways, not really an Arena comp. On Arena, if you watch my How to Play Arena video, you'll notice that it's all about the slow pushes, the good economy, or like fighting for the relics early with the all-in monk rushes. That's kind of like the main strats that work. Next up, we've got the Cumans, and I might have to put Cumans all the way up at S tier. I think the civ is insanely strong. I'll probably not put them at the highest, tier. So I just put them right below Burgundians. They're not like the best of an arena, but I think they're definitely one of the best. 2 DC booming with humans is so strong, and I feel like transitioning that into an all-in with like maybe like a castle forward into fast imp, or transitioning that into like 4 TC boom into a crazy strong economy, crazy early imp push with the humans can be insanely strong. I will say though, with the humans, you are on a timer. If you get a nice early lead, you have to end the game fast. It's a very hard civ to play, so for a lot of you guys out there, it's probably not S tier, because your options aren't great as the game goes on. That being said, in like super beginner level, I think humans are a good option in arena because you just 2 TC boom, and then you can push after that, you get very far ahead. But in the intermediate level, you'll probably run into a lot of games where you just can't finish the game, and then you end up losing to someone with a better comp. So humans usually get ahead very fast, they get the map, they get the relics if they want, and then after that, it's all about trying to convert the game as fast as possible. I gotta remove my headset, by the way. It's annoying me very much. It's too heavy on my neck here. Next up, we got the Dravidians, and I'll probably have to put the Dravidians slightly higher than I want to. I'm not a huge fan of the civ, but I have to agree that it's at least pretty solid on arena if played correctly. I'll probably put it in somewhere in B tier. I think it's very similar to Byzantine, but Byzantine is probably better because the cheaper trash is nice, and they also have the option to go monks. But Dravidian and Byzantine are kind of similar, so I'll put them around the same with each other. Yeah, Dravidian have a really nice boom. They also have great like late game with trash options, but they kind of lack power units in late game. So, Elephant Archer is your only one, but that dies pretty hard to monks. But in general, Halb, Skirm, Siege is going to be a good option with the Dravidians, and probably something you want to aim for. Next up, we've got, of course, the Ethiopians. I'm personally a huge fan of the Ethiopians. I'm going to put them all the way up here. I think they're better than Bohemians, and I think they're better than Aztecs as well. Yeah, I'll probably put I think they're better than Bengalis as well. Not so much better than Burmese, maybe though. But the reason why I value Ethiopians so high is that I feel like you can get such a good boom going with them. You don't have to make a mining camp on the gold. You get 100 free gold, you don't do loom, and so when you get to feudal age, you already have 200 gold in the bank. And that means you can fight for relics, or you can go for a quick boom with the Ethiopians, and in both strats, you're going to be with a significant advantage over your opponents. And then I feel like they have all the options late game that you'd want. Torsion Engine Siege, Arbalest if you need it, Halberdier, that's great. You're lacking some monks, but I think with the Torsion Engine Siege, you don't really need monks that much. Next up, we got the Franks. Franks are another perfect example of a good B tier civ. I'll probably put them ahead of Byzantine and Dravidians. Well, I'm not sure actually. It's close. I'll probably put them here. I think the Franks get off to a really good boom, and with their extra HP on the scouts and light cav, they can fight for the relics very easily with that one stable style, monk control, taking all the relics. Franks usually have a good chance at winning the relic war. But then after that, you run into a very similar problem that some of the other lower tier civs run into. Your late game is not great against the average arena comp. Franks don't die to halbs outright. Like, they have throwing axemen and hand cannoneer that can be good against halberdier. But halb plus monk plus siege usually ends up being very strong versus something like the Franks, because you can't really dive onto their siege or monks because there's the halbs, and then the siege and monks just whittles down your hand cannoneer and your axeman. The saving grace for Franks though is that they do get siege engineer and bomber cannon themselves, so their late game comp is actually not even bad, and it doesn't rely that heavily on paladin. That being said, you could go for paladin and like onager and try to cut your opponent's trees and win the game very fast with paladin. But if you don't manage to end the game, you probably lose because you sunk all your gold into a unit that dies the halberdier and monks late game. Next up, we've got the Goths. Ooh, the Goths. Here's the thing. I think Goths are very, very good beginner civ on arena because you get to boom and then you get to spam infantry in the late game. And Goth late game is pretty solid. You also have Hussar, skirms that have decent upgrades. You get bombard cannons. You get hand cannoneer. So Goths are actually pretty well-rounded in late game on arena if you can get there. But I feel like at higher level, they just die to some of the other civs. Like Burmese going champions plus, I don't know, monks should just be great against what Goths have. And just to give you an example, of course, I feel like Burmese also probably win the relic war against Goths. But it's kind of tricky. Goths do get the extra eco now from the hunt. So maybe Goths are a bit better than they used to be. I'll probably throw them in bottom of B tier. but with a heavy emphasis on them being stronger in lower levels than a higher level, but still strong in higher level and still having some good matchups, like against some Archer civs, for example. All right, next up we've got Gurjaras. I think Gurjaras are very solid on Arena. Definitely have a good chance to win the Relic War, because you have a pretty strong early game economy, and your late game is insanely strong with the Gurjaras, with their unique units still being pretty decent. Used to think it sucks, but I've come around since then. It's actually quite strong. And I feel like Gurjaras are definitely, a higher pick civ, but not quite as compared to like the A tier civs. So I'll probably throw it at the top of B tier, but I will insist that Gurjaras are very hard to play and not, an easy civ to pick up for beginners. Like even me, because I don't really like Gurjaras that much, I probably won't pick them on Arena, even though I recognize that they're pretty strong. Gurjaras also have one of the best matchups up against Turks, which is going to be a top tier S tier civilization on Arena. So Gurjaras having a good matchup into that is why you'll see them being picked in some tournaments. Next up, we got the Hindustani, and honestly, on paper, Hindustani sound perfect for Arena. You get some cheaper villagers, which makes a good economy. You have all the stable techs needed to fight for relics. Your late game is extremely solid with hand cannoneer with 9 range, bomber cannon, siege engineers. You're missing some good monk. Oh no, you have good monk techs even, and you have the Gulam in your back pocket. So Hindustani on paper have all the options, but I do feel like their eco bonus is pretty weak. So I'll probably put them in B tier. I'll probably put them in, probably right behind Gurjaras. Also, Hindustani having great camels doesn't really apply that much for Arena. Most of the time, people aren't playing cavalry on Arena, so having good camels doesn't really matter that much. Some sip of water. You gotta stay hydrated to make these lists. All right, we're going to go over to the Huns now, and Huns are one of the weakest arena civs. They might be even the worst arena civ out there. Yeah, they might be the worst arena civ, honestly. It sucks, because Huns are a fun civ to play, but they're really bad on Arena. You have good heavy cav archers and good cavalry, but if you think about what Huns can do to push, they don't even have onagers to cut. So they can't cut the map to win the game fast, so that's not even an option usually. And then they're forced to fight in the middle, and they don't have bombard cannons, they don't have good monks to convert a siege, and so usually with Huns, you run into the scenario where the enemy has Haub, siege onager, bombard cannon, monk, and you have to run your mobile units right into that army, because you cannot cut the map, you cannot raid because the guy's stonewalled, and your economy bonus isn't that great in the early game to really justify it. Huns are a very, very, very bad arena civ, despite being a fun civ to play. Next up, we got the Incas, and I personally believe Incas are probably bottom of S tier. They run the same problem as some of the other meso civs, where you don't have the light cap to fight for relics. Now listen, it's still possible to fight for relics with eagles and pikes, 100%. It's just not as smooth, because the light cap can always like run around and definitely dodge out on some of the weaker fights. But I honestly feel like Incas have everything they need in the late game to be a powerhouse. You've got slingers to counter all kinds of infantry. You've got Kamyuks that will shut down any cavalry play or any mass infantry play, because Kamyuks just destroy everything. And then you also get halberdiers fully upgraded. You get skirms fully upgraded that are also cheaper. You get champions that don't have supplies but are still viable. And then you also get arbalest and skirm if you need it. Skirm, of course, with unique tech. Not having any minimum range as well. So I feel like Incas are definitely pretty well-rounded. You also get monk tech as well. I personally really like them, but it's definitely not an easy civ to play. However, I believe that they have all the tools to be a master house or a powerhouse in the late game. Next up, we've got Italians. Italians are pretty well-rounded arena civ. I'm going to throw them at the bottom of A tier or top of B. I'll probably throw them in the bottom of A tier. We'll see. I could drop them down later. But I feel like they've got everything they need on Arena, but nothing that's special. They advance through the ages a bit faster. They've got condos and fast imp, which is pretty good. They have monk tech. They've got BBC. They've got fully upgraded Hussar. Really strong archer line. So you got everything, and you have a small eco bonus, but it's nothing to brag about, really. Next up, we've got the Japanese, and Japanese are probably one of those civs that does pretty well on Arena, but definitely has some weaknesses. You have really strong Halbs, infantry in general, good monks, good trebs actually, which is pretty solid. And also your tower creep, your pushing with towers is quite strong, but I can see Japanese running into a lot of instances where they just die to civs with bomber cannons. So I'll probably put Japanese around where Franks and Byzantine are. Yeah, I'll probably put them above Franks, though. I think right here makes sense for the Japanese. Next up, we've got Khmer. Probably put Khmer above. It's another civ that's really hard to play with, but I think is actually really insanely strong. Let me think. I'll probably put them right here. I think Bengalis still probably have a better late game, but I think Khmer are amazing in terms of their economy. They get off to one of the best booms in the game, and they also have a decent amount of options throughout the mid and early imp game, so like the Castle Age early imp. But then they run into the same problem that some of the other civs like Franks run into, where the late game can be very tricky. I guess Khmer can be more closely related to civs like Celts, actually, because Celts don't have monks or bomber cannons. And so Khmer can run into the same problem where if they're forced to run into halberdiers, they could lose a lot of their cav. But you do have ballista elephants that are a powerhouse in late game, battle elephants that could surprise your opponent, hussars that can be good at raiding, and you can cut with ballista elephants on the sides or onagers and really open up the game in late game, so Khmer can be quite solid in that regard. Alright, Koreans on the new patch. They recently got a huge bonus, making all of their infantry and archer line units, or archer range units, 50% cheaper in terms of wood. That is such a big bonus for the Koreans. And Koreans in general are pretty solid in arena because their towers are great. They have got more range than bomber cannon, or the same range as a bomber cannon with siege engineers. And so if you're pushing with bomber cannons of your own, some of your Korean towers, and then a bunch of trash units, there's not a lot of things in the game that can stop that. Because if the opponent goes bomber cannons, your towers deal with it. If he goes trebs, your bomber cannons snipe them. And if he goes for any kind of like paladin or something, you're going to have halbs. If he goes for archer unit, you're going to have skirms. And you just fight around your towers, which are doing a lot of DPS. And so for me, Koreans are incredibly strong in arena, but I don't know how they compare against some of the A and S tier civs. So just to be safe, I'll put them probably... I probably think Koreans are better than Bohemians, and probably better than Aztecs in some ways as well, because you have hand cannoneer as well. Yeah, I'll probably put them right here, probably ahead of Khmer as well. I think Koreans are a very strong civ in arena. Next up, we've got Lithuanians. That's going to go into... I'm going to try to go through these a little quicker here. Lithuanians, where do I put this civ? Because it's pretty solid. You get 100 extra food per town center. You also get really good monks. You can fight for the relics quite well. I'll probably throw Lithuanians top of B. I think I prefer them over Gujaras overall. Yeah, they've got really good trash options. Actually, their halbs are... Halb on halb, Lithuanians are really bad, actually. Because you're missing Blast Furnace. Car in the back doesn't like that either. And you're also missing one armor, since you don't have the last armor on your halbs. So their halberdiers are the same upgrades or same pierce armor, but they're missing a lot of melee armor and attack. So, yeah, Lithuanian late game is good, but not that insane. But I'd probably still throw them at top of B tier. Yeah, they're good enough. Next up, we got the Magyars. They suffer the same fate as civs like Khmer, civs like Huns. They don't have good options in the late game, to push in one spot. They're more of an Arabia civ with the mobility and that kind of stuff. But Magyars at least have better units than Huns and then Khmer, with the Magyar CA and Hussar being insanely strong in the late game. So I'll probably throw them around here, bottom of C. I think this is a pretty solid one. I like it here. Next up, we've got Malay. Malay, that's a good one. It recently got a big buff as well. I think Malay could actually be S tier. I'm going to do something weird. I'm going to throw Malay as one of the best civs on Arena. I think I might even have them over Burgundians, to be honest. They were already really strong in Arena, but then recently they got buffed and they get now all the infantry armor for free, meaning that they can go halbs real quick, they can go karambits real quick, and in general, I feel like Malay just advanced through the ages so quickly. I don't know, I'd probably throw them as maybe even better than Burgundians. Yeah, I probably have them over here. I really think they're that good. I think there's only a couple civs that I probably have over Malay, maybe, but I think Malay are definitely quite solid. You also have elephants that can come into the game later on. You've got bomber cannons with siege engineer. You've got arbalists. You've got monks. There's really not a lot to dislike about the civ. Thank you, Kicks, for the prime sub. Welcome. Next up, we got Malians. The civ just got nerfed. It's never been the best arena civ, but it's never been terrible. I'll probably throw them somewhere in the B tier. I don't know. Probably around... Yeah, probably right behind. Maybe ahead of Dravidians, but maybe not. They're pretty good. I will say one thing about the Malians, their champ Skarls are severely overrated, by the way. I really don't like that unit. It doesn't do enough. It has good pierce armor, but not enough pierce armor. Like, it has 1+7, right? 8 pierce armor, and Arbalest does 2 damage against that. And the champion's not fast enough. It's not like a Huskrow that can close the gap. The champion's just not fast enough to really accomplish anything. Also, you're missing 2 attack. You're missing Blast Furnace, so the champions are not that impressive. I don't know. I think Malians are pretty overrated in terms of their infantry, but they're still an overall pretty solid civ. And I think, especially if you win the relics and have a lot of gold late game, you can be quite strong. Next up, we got the Mayans, and honestly, Mayans are a good arena civ into some matchups, but then a terrible arena civ into some other matchups. So they're very matchup dependent, and I'm going to probably throw them just above the Malians. Maybe you can argue above Byzantine Dravidians, but honestly, Mayans, like, they die to Dravidians. They go probably 50-50 with Byzantine, if not they die. They're probably 50-50 with Franks. They probably lose to Japanese, maybe 50-50. They probably die to Hindustani. In fact, they probably definitely die to Hindustani. Against Gurjaras, maybe 50-50. Lithuanians, maybe 50-50. And so as you can see, I'm going through the list, and they don't have any matchup where they dominate. And the reason for this is they're missing monks and bomber cannons. Also, Mayans are usually good for their double gold comp, eagles and plumes. But since they don't have light calf to fight for the relic, and they don't have that craziest early game economy to fight for the relics, I don't think that Mayans should be getting the relics more often than not. And then Mayans without gold are usually very easy to deal with. And so Mayans, great on other maps, pretty average on arena. Next up, we've got the Mongols. Mongols are interesting. We've seen Taro put them to really good use in the arena tournament. And I think something like the Mangudai play, trying to go forward castle, can be interesting. Mangudai in general, usually very good at dealing with any kind of siege on arena. And you also get decent light cap to fight for the relics. But I still am not a huge fan of the Mongols on arena, because yes, you've got a good late game, like you've got a great late game, but you struggle to get there in good shape because you don't have a very good economy bonus past that hunt bonus in the early game. And so usually you get outboomed by some of the other civilizations. And then even in late game, you probably still die to some of the other strong late game civs that have a lot of good monks. So I'll probably throw Mongols somewhere in the B tier again. Probably ahead of Franks, maybe ahead of Japanese, maybe ahead of Hindustani, but probably not. So something like this could be good in the Mongols. Yeah, you just get outboomed more often than not. Oh, Persians. This civ is not good on arena. No, I don't like it at all. You still get bomber cannon, which is decent, but you have very little good options. I'll probably put them behind Bulgarians. Yeah, only reason they're ahead of Magyars is because they get bomber cannon. That's about it. Bomber cannon's huge in arena. It's super, super important. But like Persians are not fantastic at all. They have a decent economy if you just pure boom, but their options late game are quite limited. Trash bows and Paladin maybe. But overall, I think you just get like matched. Your boom gets matched by some of the other civilizations. And I just feel like the Persians don't have enough to show for it. Next up, we got the Poles. And this is probably going to be another higher tier civ. But I'm not going to put them as high as I'd like to. I feel like Poles are probably in A tier. They used to be in S tier, but they got a couple nerfs since then on their stone and their farming. So I think Poles are insane if you can get to the late game with them. And they're probably still one of the best civs in the game. But I feel like these 5 civs will probably beat Poles more often than not if played correctly. But Poles can be pretty much better than Cumans in some cases. But I think the other 4 are going to be better than Poles in most games. Also with the Poles, they're really hard to play on arena. Because while all the light cav action and fighting for relics is happening, placing full work farms is such a pain. So the best strategy with Poles might just be to pure boom, just to make the game easier for you guys. I will say, Poles are fantastic as a beginner civ on arena, because you get to just sit behind your walls and boom, and you don't care that much for the relics, because you can just play with Winged Hussar in the late game. You don't rely that much on gold. So just give up the relics, go for a pure boom if you like the Poles, and just set up your farms perfectly, and then just win an Imperial Age, because your Imperial Age is so strong anyways, and you don't rely that heavily on relics. Next up, we got Portuguese. Portuguese didn't get a single nerf on their economy, but they did get nerfed on their Vitoria and their organ guns to some degree, or the organ guns got changed a little bit. But I think the Portuguese economy is still great. I'll probably put them ahead of Cumans in S tier. I think Portuguese are probably one of the best arena civs still. You don't have that degenerate organ gun rush that's used to be like the popular strat, but you still have amazing options throughout the game. And if you do get some relics with Portuguese, you're happy, but if you don't, you've got the Vitoria anyways. So you really don't mind losing the relics, and I think that's going to be pretty fine. Next up, we got the Saracens, and it's going to be hard to place the Saracens. I think if played 100% correctly, Saracens can be very dangerous, but you rely very heavily on that market bonus. That being said, Saracens also have a great late game, so you have a good early push and a great late game probably. I'll probably throw Saracens somewhere in the B tier, probably above Malians, but not above Mayans. That seems pretty fair for the Saracens. Yeah, I think a really good Saracen player makes them look A tier, and a really bad Saracen player makes them look C tier. So right here sounds about fair. Next up, we got Sicilians, and I'll probably throw the Civ. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Sicilians in Arena. They get outpaced so hard. They don't have the best options either. I'll probably throw it in B tier, though, or top of C. Is Sicilian better than Goths, though, or is Goths better? Nah, Sicilian's probably better. But again, no Bomber Cannon, no Monks. That's the problem with Sicilians. I'll probably put them top of C tier. At least Goths have Bomber Cannons. It's a really big deal. Slavs, top of C tier for the same reason. Again, Sicilian and Slavs are very similar. I don't even know which one I'd prefer. They both have good infantry and good siege, but at least Slavs have monks, actually. So maybe that buffs Slavs quite heavily. I kind of forgot about the monk aspect. So maybe we'll throw Slavs a little higher. Good farms, decent fight for the relics. I can see Slavs being definitely higher. I'll probably throw them above mines as well. And they also got faster monks nowadays. So yeah, maybe Slavs are a bit higher up. I'll probably throw them above business. I'll throw them above Franks. I think this is not the worst placement for Slavs. I think Slavs can definitely beat a lot of these civilizations below here. That seems like a pretty decent spot for them. You'll fight for the relics. You'll get a few of them. And I feel like these ones are, these civs have more weaknesses than Slavs probably. But they're probably one of the more fragile, higher tier civs. Next up, we got the Spanish. I think the Spanish are cool. I think they're reliant on Conquistador quite a bit as well. But I don't know. They're a decent civ. You also get some gold for the upgrades. I don't know how good the build is on Arena with that, but I can imagine it being pretty solid. Your late game is also insane with Supremacy, Bomber Towers, Bomber Cannons. You have pretty much all the options late game with Spanish. Don't know exactly where to place them though. They're kind of like Mongols where they lack that strong eco bonus, but they're still quite solid. Probably put them right above Mongols, right there in the B tier. Next up, we got the Tars. The Tars are really not a great arena civ, despite seeing Tato win with them on Arena because of the flaming camels. I still don't think the Tars are fantastic on Arena. There's no hills, so that one bonus that gets completely erased from the civ. Your 19 range Trebs are great in the late game, but only if you get all the way there. And usually their units die out to like trash and siege. So it's quite hard to make the Tars work, I feel. But they're not that bad. Your economy isn't great with them either, but it's not terrible. Like the faster sheep or the longer lasting sheep are okay. I'll put them top of C tier. No, top of C tier. Next up, we got the Tuins. Tuins used to be insane on Arena, but I think they kind of got power crept a little bit. Some of the other civs just became better than Tuins, and I don't know. The meta kind of shifted away from where Teutons were really strong. I think Teutons are very matchup specific. I'll probably throw them in above Bengalis though. I think Teutons do great against a lot of these lower tier civs, but I can imagine Teutons just getting absolutely abused by the upper tier civs. Like, what do they do against Ethiopians with Arbalest, Halb, Bombard Cannon? Like, you don't really have a good answer to that kind of composition. And then, like, same for most of these higher tier civs. Like, Teutons just gets completely abused by these ones. Next up, we got the Turks. That's going to be another S tier civ. Probably somewhere up here. I wouldn't be surprised if Turks is better than Malay as well. I think Turks might be the best arena civ in the game. Yeah, those three are very interchangeable. In fact, these four are very interchangeable probably. So I'll throw Turks as the best arena civ in the game. Janissaries are incredibly powerful. Free light cap to fight for relics if you want to. Free Hussar in the late game with extra Pierce Armor, which will dominate the entire game. You've got heavy CA, that's a very strong possibility. Fast imp strategies with Turks are crazy good. I've made a few guides on YouTube. If you're looking for a cheesy strat to win lower or mid ELO arena 1v1s, Turks fast imp is so insanely strong, so definitely use it. And I feel like Turks just have everything you want in arena. The only downside to Turks is that if they lose the Relic War, they could be in some trouble. And Turks have some awkward matchups because they don't have, no pikes, no elite skirm. So against Gurjaras, they're actually in a bit of a pickle because if Gurjaras just goes for the Shawarma riders plus the camels, Turks can't really do that much against that because they can't go gunpowder. Shawarma Rider will dodge that, and they can't go their own camels because Gujarat camels are way stronger. So some awkward matchups like that could come up, but otherwise, I really do believe that Turks is one of the best, if not the best, arena civ right now. Next up, we got Vietnamese, and this is new patch Vietnamese. They're going to be very high up on my list. I think Vietnamese are probably somewhere up here. I probably put them above Britons. The new patch buffed Vietnamese to oblivion. This civilization is so incredibly strong right now. I'm going to bump Incas down and Vietnamese up, and then Cumans down to A tier, actually. And then I'm also going to throw Italians down, and then Goth down here, Malans down here, Saracens down here. Vietnamese are so strong, I had to redo my entire tier list for them. They're so strong. I haven't tested 100% how good they are, but in my opinion, Vietnamese are crazy good right now. Insane economy. Wheelbarrow now saves you a villain and a half, handcart a villager. So not only do you pick up these civilization or these techs for cheaper, but you also now they research faster, so you get to get them in faster. So wheelbarrow doesn't take up as much TC time. So we get wheelbarrow, it lasts a minute or a vill and a half instead of 3 vills time. Handcart instead of 2 vills time, it lasts 1 vills time. So you just get extra villagers over your opponent, and you get the techs for cheaper. And on top of that, Vietnamese have a great late game. Rattan archers, Imperial skirmishers, bomber cannons. I think they have bomber towers as well. But yeah, they just have a ton of options. I think they also have hand cannoneer, but don't quote me. But they even have champions if you need them. They've got halbs. They've got pretty much all the options that are really solid. They've got really strong elephants. Yeah, I really think that, I haven't tested 100%, but I really think that Vietnamese can be all the way up here. Next up, we've got the Vikings, and this is unfortunately not the best arena civ. I don't know. I'm really not a fan of the Vikings. I feel like you can outboom people, but then you have to end the game really fast because your late game with Vikings is so bad. I'll probably throw them above Persians, and I'll drop Magyars and Persians down here. I think that makes the most amount of sense. So Vikings being like decent. I'll probably put them above Bulgarians as well, but Bulgarians have better siege, so let's keep it like that. Vikings have great economy, but you lack a lot of options, and so that's probably the biggest downside to them. And you don't have bomber cannon, no monks, not even a great late game in general, even on maps like Arabia. So even on maps like Arena, Viking late game is even weaker against some of the heavy siege comps. You die to siege onager every single time, no question about it. So yeah, Vikings are really quite quite weak after that early game economy spike or mid game economy spike. All right, and lastly, guys, I promised I'd do it, the Romans at the end of the list. So the Romans will probably be, and this is what I'm guessing, will probably be a really strong civilization, but you struggle because you don't have good monks and you don't have good bomber cannons. And so I'd probably put Romans somewhere. I mean, they do get redemption and block printing, but they don't get sanctity. So their monks are okay. I'll probably put Romans somewhere in the A tier. I don't know exactly where, but I think they're somewhere in the A tier. And I'm pretty confident with that. They're really strong against certain civilizations, but then really weak against some other civilizations. So actually, Romans might be top of B as well. Maybe top of B or like somewhere at the bottom of A tier. Yeah, not great, but not bad. Some good matchups, some terrible matchups. So I think something like that could be pretty solid for the Romans. All right, that's going to do it for this tier list, guys. One more time on Twitch, you can say hi to YouTube if you want to. Say what's up to them. Pat and AoE, thanks for the Prime for 3 months. Let me know, guys, on YouTube if you guys enjoyed this. And if you want more tier lists, I plan to make them like twice a month. So that should be like the kind of output I'm going for. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Peace. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Comment below if you want to, agree or argue with some of the choices. Feel free. Again, this is just my opinion at the end of the day. And yeah, thanks for watching. Take care and peace.